thank you for having me here again. It's really wonderful. I love the energy in this congregation. It's really a great pleasure. We are currently in the Association for Global New Thoughts, one of the seasons, and it's a season for humane and compassionate service. So my talk today is going to be about sacred service, or seva. Seva is defined in the dictionary as a sacred service or doing a random act of kindness without any expectation of anything in return. It's also defined as being in service in great joy, of giving in great joy. Kahlil Gibran said, "I slept and I dreamed that life is all joy. I woke and I saw that life is all service. I served and I saw that service is joy." Now, when I was a kid, I had a fairly narrow perspective of what a gift was. I thought it was something material that someone gave you, or maybe money. And it's only as I've grown up and matured that I recognize that there's gifts in everything. They don't have to be something physical or something of a monetary value. They can be the simplest things. And part of my work on the planet here is to learn to embrace everything as a gift, even some things that don't seem like gifts when they're being given to us. Just waking up in the morning is a gift. Having the strength to embrace new challenges or changes in our lives, that's a gift. It's so easy to take gifts for granted, but they're everywhere. So I encourage all of us to keep our awareness open for the gifts that come in, especially the unexpected ones. So what's in it for us? How do we recognize that in all of our actions there can be gifts? Well, part of my work is to be actively open, to be aware of every experience and to embrace them as they come in. Even if they're kind of yucky at the time, it's amazing what can come out of them. Kahlil Gibran said, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give." And that's going to be a big focus of what I'm talking about. There's so many diverse ways to show up as seva or in service that I had a hard time figuring out what to talk about this morning. So I decided that it would be what I did on my summer vacation in 2013, because it was actually really a turning point for me. I had never, prior to 2013, taken a real vacation, i.e. gone somewhere, done something that didn't have a gig attached to it. It was truly an amazing experience for me. So I recognize that many of us are natural caregivers. We're gifters. We might be taking care of children, an aging parent, a spouse, a friend. Every relationship that we enter into, whether casual or committed, has the opportunity to give and to receive, and that's a big part. I have always been a lot more comfortable giving. I have been kind of a closed conduit to allowing people to give back to me. So I've had some really big lessons. The Buddha says, before giving, the mind of the giver is happy. While giving, the mind of the giver is made peaceful. And having given, the mind of the giver is uplifted. Everything is a gift in its own way. It's a gift watching innocence play. When the wind blows the dark clouds away, for these gifts I give thanks each day. For these gifts I give thanks each day. It's a gift that a bird can fly free, that the rivers can flow to the sea. Love's the gift that your heart gives to me. For these gifts I give thanks each day. For these gifts I give thanks each day. There's a gift in each smile that we share, and a gift to have friends that care. Look around, there are gifts everywhere. For these gifts I give thanks each day. For these gifts I give thanks each day. Fill the world with the gift of your love. Touch with kindness sent from above. Fill our hearts with the peace of the dove. For these gifts I give thanks each day. For these gifts I give thanks each day. Thank you. There's a definite reward on many levels when you recognize that all service is seva, no matter how incidental it may seem. One of the sevas that I do where I live is we do a community lunch, and it's Baba's Kitchen, and they do it, which is an Indian sect, and they do it at a Catholic church, and people just show up. A lot of people from the Unity in Santa Cruz come. I recognized that being there and preparing the food was a seva because it felt good to me, and you know, it was obviously a service. We're providing meals for people. What was interesting is I brought my niece with me once, and I was talking with one of the co-volunteers, and he asked if she was my daughter, and I said, well, kind of. It's a long story, but I will give you the short story. My sister, who had been estranged from our family for about 6 years, and she died very suddenly. And I ended up with her two youngest children as the estranged auntie. It was one of those situations in my life where I really determined that I was going to do the right thing no matter what, and I was not going to be attached to the outcome. So I just showed up, and it took 2.5 years to take the walls down and to build the trust. But I was able to turn to this person and say, you know, she really is my daughter. And he said, wow, what an incredible seva. And that was the first time that it occurred to me that I had been in service, because I had received so much that I hadn't expected, that I hadn't been clinging to. So like I said, you can be surprised by how you can show up in sacred service. Now, about my vacation. I'm sure you're all just dying to hear about it. No slides. Well, one, actually. But only one. So I needed to get back over to Switzerland, where I had performed for many years, to retrieve gear that I had left behind. It's kind of a long story, but I had toured for 17 years regularly. And when I had returned from my last tour, I recognized that my mother's Alzheimer's had progressed to the point where I couldn't leave for a month at a time again, which had been my regular pattern. And when I left, I assumed I'd be back in 6 months, for a few months. And so my poor friends had been storing my equipment for years. And I got an email from them, and they said, we just moved, and we moved all your stuff. And I said, look, I promise I'll come in 2013. And I'll pick, before 2014, I'm gonna come and I'm gonna deal with my stuff. So I just happened to casually mention in my monthly e-newsletter that I was gonna come back over to Switzerland, not for gigs, but to visit friends and to take care of some business. So I get this email. Dear Karie, thank you for your newsletter. You really had a stressful time during the last years. I can understand a bit because my mother died last March, who suffered from dementia during the last months, which made it quite difficult for us. Great to hear that you plan to come to Switzerland this year. In case you need a place to stay, I could offer you our chalet in the mountains, 1.5 driving hours from Zurich, located in Grindelwald, facing Eiger and Jungfrau. The house takes 12 people in 7 rooms and is available the whole summer except August. It's a great walking area with gorgeous views. Feel free to accept or not. I would be happy to accommodate you and your folks for free. Oh my God! Grindelwald is one of the most beautiful places in the world. I hardly knew Christoph. I had met him casually a couple times through mutual friends of a dear friend of mine who had passed away 19 years ago. He had come several times to hear me play, and we had interacted in the club a little bit. But I have many friends in Switzerland that I have coffee with, take walks with, go to dinner with, go to their homes. I hardly knew Christoph. And if you know Swiss people, they are very reserved. So this was incredible to me to get this. So I couldn't even respond for about 2 weeks. I was just like, really? A chalet in Grindelwald for free? But I finally pushed through my resistance and my doubt and my discomfort, and I accepted his offer. And it was truly a gift because my friends are spread out over 4 countries. He offered me the perfect solution, this incredible gift, so that I could see everybody who was willing to come and meet me there. The place was huge. So this is what came up for me. And you can nod if this would have been what came up for you. Do I really deserve this? Is there a catch somewhere? How can I possibly reciprocate? Holmes says, those who give of themselves the most receive the most, unless they block the circuit again in the attitude that they wish only to give. In this case, they are apt to impoverish themselves. The important point is to give as an expression of abundant living, not with the idea of getting back in full measure. The divine circuit takes care of the return, and man needs only be receptive to his good. My psyche was about to go crazy, and then I recognized that what Holmes says is true. Those who give of themselves the most receive the most unless they block the circuit. So I've been a really good blocker. Anybody else? Anybody besides me? All right, well, this was a huge lesson. This is why I'm sharing about my vacation. When I started thinking about my Swiss friends, I remembered that we had 10 people over one summer when we lived right off the Avenue of the Giants, which is a beautiful tourist place in Humboldt County, and how much I enjoyed having them there. It wasn't just how much they enjoyed being in this beautiful area, but how I felt sharing of my treasures and my gifts and my home. And that now that we live in the Santa Cruz Mountains near other national parks and right on a creek, we've already had 4 of our Swiss friends come and stay with us there, and how great that felt for me. So there's presents. Carlos Ruiz Chafran said, presents are made for the pleasure of those who give them, not the merits of those who receives them. Now, I agree with him in part. That's a slide, should be a slide. I agree with him in part, but I also think that unless we block that circuit, the energy just keeps moving. When we give, we receive. When someone gives to us, we receive. And it's kind of if you can picture it that way, when you're being resistant to someone giving you something or offering you a kindness, if you can focus on that it's just going to go through you and it's going to come right back out. Or perhaps the notion that you already paid that forward in a kindness that you extended to someone else. Everything about our time in Grindelwald was absolutely magical. The chalet was full the whole time, people coming and going. My friends are as diverse as the moon and the stars. And everyone got along. Christoph had a blast being host. At first I was a little uncomfortable, but when I could see how much fun he was having and how rewarding the whole experience was being for him, I felt great. And the circle continues. He gave us so much and he received so much. This is the beauty and the lesson in this experience for me. I learned how to receive his gifts. And I learned how blessed I was to have friends that would drive 8 and 10 hours to come and be with me. these were all people that I had met through my music, but that they wanted to come and just hang out with me, that I was okay just as a human being, not just as the person that was the entertainer. That was a huge thing for me. Another thing I realized was that he would not have received the gifts of all of these new friendships or the joy that he had in sharing his treasures and his home and his family's chalet and the stories that he had from being, they've had this since the 1970s. If I had declined his offer, I would have ripped him off of that experience. That really grew me. Jared Kint says, "The only gift I have to give is the ability to receive. If giving is a gift, and it surely is, then my gift to you is to allow you to give to me." My gift to you is to allow you to give to me. Is this making sense? Okay. I can tell there's a lot of people in here that have the same issue as me. Let me tell you, I'm still working on it. And the most recent experience that I want to share, Dwayne and I were part of a team. Oh God, I hope I'm not going to choke up. To care for a very dear friend who played cello with us since, I've known him since the 70s. Brian was diagnosed with throat cancer almost exactly a year ago. Brian passed away 3 weeks ago. It was a really interesting journey. Brian, Dwayne, and I are all really good friends. Brian met my best girlfriend, Shakay, when I was producing her CD. They became best friends. They all live in LA. I live 8 hours north in the Santa Cruz Mountains. When I found out Brian was sick, I knew that I needed to be there. For him, for Dewey, that's what Brian called Dwayne, and for Shakay. There was no way I was going to let any of us experience this without me being there in support. I've done death. I do it okay. I spent a lot of miles on the road. I put 24,000 miles on my car since last July. Near the end, our little team of Brian's 90-year-old mother, Dorothy, Shakay, Dwayne, and me determined that we wanted to have a 24-hour vigil for Brian. He was given a day and a half. That stretched to 8 days. Our team started to burn out. We got exhausted being there. We put one little posting on Facebook. Talk about gifts. People stepped forward that knew Brian in elementary school, middle school, people who had been CNAs, who knew how to care for terminally ill people. They took 10-hour shifts at night. They reconnected with him. And the shifts changed. It was incredible. Dwayne can even tell you.
It was incredible during the shift change. You know, we'd try and get somebody to cover so that you could be relieved, and the person would come in, and it was somebody you hadn't seen in 30 years, and we knew each other from way back when, and we would overlap. So your shift was over, and 2 hours later, you were going on from having sat and talked and experienced this gift that we had with Brian.
It was amazing. And the thing that just broke me so wide open was how everybody thanked everybody else. People would come in and they'd go, "God, thank you so much for being here. I hear you've been here the whole time for him, and I would have come sooner if I'd known." And it was like Dorothy thanking us constantly, Brian's mother. We don't need to be thanked. We received so much from the experience of being there in support of him, and to see the love that surrounded him the whole end. It was so powerful. He gave us so much. I witnessed such incredible unconditional love from so many different people. I connected so deeply. Shakay, Dorothy, Dwayne, and I, you could not tear our friendship apart with a sledgehammer. We are galvanized from this experience. And Brian gave us so much. He was a hellion and he was an angel. So I guess the gift in this is a generous man. This is an old proverb. This is a slide. A generous man forgets what he gives and remembers what he receives. Sometimes it's really hard to see the gifts and experiences. 20 years ago when my friend Peter died, and Christoph was the person that I just happened to contact at Swiss Flight Control. Look what happened 20 years later. He gives me his chalet. I had to lose Peter to meet him. In every random act of kindness to friends, strangers, we're already paying it forward. We have to remember that. And hopefully remembering that will make us be just that much more kind, love just that much more unconditionally, show up and be this presence on earth. I want to carry with me, and I want you to carry with you, the knowing that every act of kindness, something as simple as holding the door for someone or allowing someone to merge on the freeway, we're opening our hearts to strangers, and we are putting into motion an energy that returns to us tenfold. I think sometimes what stops us from giving is the belief in lack, that we don't have enough, or that there isn't enough money, enough love, enough whatever to go around. We have to remember, we are all those things. We are love. We are and can be, and we can show up as unconditional love. And we need to teach this and live this by our example in the world. Thank you so much for having us here. Namaste. Oh, we're supposed to do a song. Sorry. Alrighty then, which button? I like this one better. I'm finding my faith, living in love, filling with hope and peace from above. As I abide in all of these, I know the greatest gift is love. I know the greatest gift is love. I'm living in joy, finished with fear. That still small voice within me clear. Open my heart and I will hear and know the greatest gift is love. I know the greatest gift is love. I am opening up, looking deep down inside, learning to trust there's nothing to hide. I'm letting go of my foolish pride, claiming the greatest gift of love. I know the greatest gift is love. I am reaching out, finding answers within. Every new day brings a place to begin. Each lesson learned helps my heart to mend, knowing the greatest gift is love. Knowing the greatest